In the previous project, we primarily focused on rendering our scene using Hardware Renderer 2.0. Although that's still a valid option for this project, I'm going to show you how to render using the Arnold renderer and a couple of tricks that maybe will help us get a really nice looking render at hopefully a reasonable render time. We're also going to talk about a new process called image-based lighting. So, first, let's go ahead and try to render this scene in Arnold. And we know that if I go to Arnold, open Arnold Render View, and hit play, we're going to get the error where Arnold tells us, sure, I'll render it, but there's no lights in the scene, and you're not going to get anything in your image. So, I'll go ahead and hit stop, and I'll show you one of the lights that we can use in order to get some lighting immediately. If we go to Arnold, Lights, we have this option for a Skydome light. Now we saw this earlier, but if I click it, it creates a dome around our scene that encompasses the entire environment. And if I hit render now, we get a render of our scene that is pretty gray and bland, but the lighting is kind of nice on it. We're seeing some ambient occlusion for some shadows and a lot of bounce lighting happening to fill in some of these darker areas. So if you just need to see what your models look like, creating a Skydome light is a pretty nice solution. However, this is not the finished solution. A Skydome light is never intended to be your final method of lighting, to just click Skydome light and be done. And the reason for that is because this is very unrealistic. There are no instances in the real world where we are completely surrounded by a giant white light on all sides. And so although it clearly shows us our model, it looks very fake. So what we're going to do is we're going to create some lighting with this Skydome light. And we're going to do that by putting an image on this Skydome light. Now we're going to use a very specific kind of image called an HDRI. So I'm going to show you some places where you can get HDRI images that are free for use. So if we go to HDRI Haven, there are a whole lot of Creative Commons and free options for HDRI images. And if you scroll down, you'll start to see browse 200 and plus HDRIs. You'll start to see examples of these images. Now, if you look at this image, these images look kind of weird. And so let's click here and see if we can see. What we're actually seeing is a full 360-degree panorama of a single location. And that means somebody took images from all different angles using a special technique in order to create this one image. But this one image will perfectly wrap around our sphere of our Skydome. And if we do that, we can use the lighting that comes from this image to illuminate our scene. You can see some examples of what that lighting might look like down here. So this is what the lighting from that image would look like on glass, a matte white, something reflective, and something reflective with color. However, in this case, I'm not 100% sure I want my breakfast to be inside of an aircraft workshop. So let's try to find an environment that makes a little bit more sense for a breakfast scene. Now, there are ways we can search for specific environments. We can find indoor environments and narrow it down to that, and start to find something that feels a little bit more homey. Maybe something like this, or even this. I'm going to try this Kale interior. And again, you can start to see what the lighting will look like in this scene. Now, the size of image you decide to download is up to you. The bigger the image, the more detail the background will have, and the more information will come in the lighting, but it's also going to be a larger image. So I'm going to try something like this 2K image to start off with. And again, I'm going to put this in my source images. Now, if you double click on this image to open it, you may not be able to open it. Only certain programs are capable of opening an HDR image or an EXR image. But we can go ahead and map that in to the color of our Skydome. So if I go to my attribute editor and choose the color of my Skydome and click my options box, it's going to ask what do I want to apply to the color, and I want to apply a file or an image. Now it gives me the option to find that image, so I'll click on my folder, and again, K-Lay Interior 2K. If I select that, you'll see the image, and I'll hit open. And what it's going to do is it's going to wrap that image around our Skydome to where if we look around, it's kind of like we can see it from all angles. Now, don't confuse this with us creating a temporary background. Our table is not touching the floor, and none of that stuff is happening. So this is just a way to get an image in the background in order to use the lighting from that image to light our scene. It's also important to make sure that our color space is set to raw on this. For the most part, Maya seems to do this automatically anymore, but in the past that's been an issue. So make sure you have your color space set to raw on your image. And now when I hit play, what Maya is going to do is extract the lighting information from that image and use it to light our scene. So now the light is coming from a specific direction, which appears to be a little bit more off to screen left, and you'll see that it's causing it to cast a shadow. We're also getting some information about color from this as well. We're getting bounce light from the room, some of the warmer colors in here, and some of the cooler colors are showing up in the shadows with the blue. However, we're getting a lot of grain in this image, and that's because what is happening is this Skydome is casting little packets of light, little photons of light into the scene, and those little photons are bouncing around in order to illuminate the scene. The number of photons that are being cast will change both the detail of our lighting and the render time. So currently we're able to render this in about 5 seconds, but we're getting this very grainy image. Now if I need this to look better, I can go to my Skydome light options, and this samples option will make it look much better. So if I change this from 1 to something like 5 and hit enter, it will re-render it, but you'll notice that the render is taking a much longer time to complete. So this render on my computer took twice as long, 10 seconds. So that's 10 seconds for a single frame, and that's actually still a pretty small image, 960 by 540. So recognize that we're getting some really nice lighting automatically, but it's going to come at the cost of a longer render time.